Kathy, I don't know if you heard, but Talbot and I are on the line as well.
Okay, we'll be getting started in just a second. All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Bill, would you like to lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stacia, roll call, please.
Steve Jarvis.
Here.
Bill Miner.
Here.
Jim Peterson.
Present.
John Johnson.
Here.
And Stacia, would you please address anybody on the phone?
And can everyone announce themselves that's on the phone, please?
Hunt Walters. Talbot Wazorek and Katie Cook with from Gunderson Palmer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so for purposes of introduction, you've heard we have Talbot and Katie that are on the phone. I don't know how many folks have been able to read the minutes of the last meeting or view the video, as it was just recently put up on YouTube, but as of January 1st, Frank Bettman has resigned as our city attorney. We had conversations with the city council, and in order to ensure that we still retain legal counsel so we can continue to do business until we have a time where we can do a request for proposal and seek input from folks interested in being an attorney, we're contracting with Gunderson, Palmer, Nelson, and Ashmore to represent us. So Talbot and Katie are on the phone right now in representation. I also want to remind everyone that we are recording this meeting. We will be recording city council meetings going forward. So if you do have something to address to the council, please come up to the table, speak clearly, and provide your name. Also, if you have any conversations to conduct, please use our vestibule as an area to do that, as the recording equipment is quite sensitive, so it's very possible that that will all be picked up. With that being said, before I get into the consent calendar, we do have our Pennington County Sheriff's Department here. I'd like to go ahead and recognize them at this point to give us their report out in the efforts to wisely utilize their time and let them get back to protecting our city. So,
Mayor. Ryan. Hey. Happy New Year, everybody. I really don't have a lot to report. December was a pretty slow month. We had 3 arrests, and those were all warrant arrests. So, is there any questions regarding the report or any questions for us in general?
it looks like we have a couple training hours more than we did last year. Are you onboarding new staff, or is that just?
So, I believe Deputy Cundy went to a mobile response team training, so that was
Okay.
40 hours.
Okay. Keeping those certifications up, good thing.
That was a new one for him.
Was it?
That was MRT, wasn't it, Doug? Yeah.
Okay.
Just want to make sure I'm being factual with that.
Nope.
We do a lot of training, so I'm trying to, it's hard to keep them all
It's
straight.
not a bad thing. Council, any questions or comments?
I reported last meeting about the alcohol compliance check. I forgot to do it the 1st of December, but thank you for going out and getting that done.
Yeah, and our investigations division does that, so they do a nice job with that.
So I was glad to see everybody in Hill City pass.
Yep.
Right. Right, looks
All right.
like you're good.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Sergeant
everybody.
Hartman.
Take care.
Okay, all right. Now we'll go back to standard agenda, consent calendar, approval of 1/13/2020 agenda, approval of 12/23/2019 meeting minutes, approval of claims, resolution 2020-01 designation of official newspaper, and resolution 2020-02 designation of depositories. Any conversation?
I'd like to move the city administrator, Connie Wallers, and the city attorney down to action items.
That will be action item 6A1, 6A2, and 6A3. Any other discussion?
Yes. I'd like to suggest a change to the agenda.
Okay. And what would that be?
Action item 6A, it says 209 Main Street, appeal of removal order for non-conforming illegal electronic sign.
Okay.
I understand the sign is non-conforming. Isn't the purpose of our meeting tonight to determine whether it's legal or not legal? So I'd like the word illegal removed.
Stricken? Okay. Okay, that's an agenda adjustment. Any other discussion or conversation? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the consent calendar.
I have a motion from Alderman Jarvis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, roll call vote, please, Stacia.
Jim Peterson,
Yes.
Bill Miner,
Yes.
John Johnson,
Yes.
Steve Jarvis.
Yes.
All in favor, motion approved. Public comment. Members of the public may speak on any matter that is not on the agenda. We would ask that you please keep your remarks to 2 minutes per speaker. And if you have something to say, please come forward and identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Vic Alexander. I have a little sheet here, I think Brett already has one. These are what I received from the city, and I was just looking for some clarification. Some clarification on what it says. It kind of takes more than your 2 minutes to read it, but basically, if you look at the picture on the second page, it's a picture of a shoveled sidewalk alongside of the Super 8. And without getting into all the dates and stuff, I'm not necessarily, I apologize for not having it only as clean as it is. You can see that it's hand shoveled. I'm not sure exactly what went on. Can you clarify, Brett? You know, I talked to you that day and you were gonna get back to me.
So with snowstorm, so with snowstorm events, there's a requirement that the shovels or the sidewalks are shoveled within 48 hours. And so what our code enforcement person, Danny Shade, has been doing is sending out a courtesy reminder to people if she identifies a location that she feels hasn't been addressed. And so that's what this letter is essentially a reminder that it needs to be done. I think for this particular storm event, I think there were 10 letters that went out to varying property owners.
How many?
10. In the case of this one, again, I'm not the code enforcement officer on it. I agree with Vic that looks like there's some shoveling that was going on. It also looks like the snow had drifted kind of back over. I can see where the snow had been pushed probably by the wind or something. And so, yeah, and I'm sure that the county snowplower, you can obviously tell, on Main Street and on the county road that the plows that come through push snow back up where you just shoveled it off. So I think the main thing here is, obviously with the one-time courtesy reminder, is just to get the word out of saying, hey, keep it on the forefront of your mind. This is not a citation. This is a reminder. We're letting the public know that we're out looking at things. And so you got a letter. So, but again, right in the first sentence it says, please accept this letter as a one-time reminder.
Okay. I guess what my question was, looking at it, having been, is that to any of you guys, is that satisfactory the way that it is right now? Is that not satisfactory? I didn't know whether it had to do with the parts about putting snow and ice, putting salt out, that sort of thing, or if the little mounds, when the snowplow went by. For this particular event, we hand shoveled that sidewalk 4 times during those 5 days after that storm, after the 2-day deal. We hand shoveled it 4 times during the course of that week, those 5 days. And that little bit of snow that come in underneath of the guardrail, it's not a real big thing. I just am upset because I have a standard that I try to keep. And if I need to up my game, I guess I'm gonna have to, but I'm just wondering, do I? Or is the course to where this is shoveled, is that satisfactory to anybody? Did it warrant necessarily, am I thinking it should have, and we shoveled it again this morning, I shoveled it yesterday morning, we shoveled it again this morning because of the inch that fell on middle of the day on Sunday. And then guess what happened at 4 o'clock this afternoon? Snowplow came by and we had to shovel the whole damn thing again. Jason did it this afternoon. So we did it 3 times. We shoveled that sidewalk 3 times for 3-inch snow over the course of 3 days. And we do the best we can, but if it's not quality enough, I guess I need to know if that's, because I can tell you, over 100 places in the city right now at this very moment in time, way beyond the 48 hours for that snow that happened Saturday afternoon, that little 1-inch little flurry, there is, you run out of paper in City Hall if this isn't good enough. I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, because it just seemed like this is, and if there was 10 of them, that's great. Was it about 10, or there should be an exact number, how many went out?
I believe it was 10.
Okay. I almost flabbergasted that this isn't good enough. But I just was kind of getting a pulse for the council if this is, if this is good enough, or if we've been keeping it, or if anybody else heard anything else, or is there, somebody goes out and looks for these, that are in non-compliance, or is there somebody that actually goes out from code enforcement to cruise around and find them, or is it by notice of?
There's a picture, staff goes out, takes a picture of.
That's what, but does it by a complaint, or is it just by staff goes out and
They
looking
go
for
out,
them?
so.
Because I expect there's gonna be 100 of them.
There's an observation of the weather patterns. Obviously snow can fall at any moment and stop at any moment. So there's an understanding that we need to be reasonable with, okay, when does that 48 hours start? What if there's a snowstorm that starts at 10, stops at 11, starts back up at 1 o'clock? We're not going to track all those little squalls that go through here.
I'm not worried about that.
So there's that 48-hour window in order to clear it out. Danny will go out and drive around town, observe locations that she has concerns with, take pictures, mail those letters out.
And then the second part of the, I'm sorry.
I guess, why is this not clear enough? I mean, it doesn't look to me like that you can't get down through there.
I think it'd be hard to keep clean with the snowplow going by all the time.
Well, but it's still my responsibility to do that. I understand that, but this seems to be is it circled red right there, to somebody's discretion that was not satisfactory. And I'm curious as to what is not satisfactory.
What happens then next
about it.
time she sees this like this? Is it
So
another
if
reminder?
if she's working with property owners and they're responsive, which we know Vic is responsive to his sidewalks, if she sees another location or the same location that has ice or snow on it, she's going to communicate the same warning, because we know that Vic is working on it. Now, there's other locations in town that don't want to achieve the compliance of the snow removal. So those people, after their first warning, they might get a second warning as well. Eventually, they're going to get a citation because they're not actively working with the city to deal with snow removal. I mean, that's all it is. It's compliance. Code enforcement's all about trying to address that 10 to 20% of people that don't want to comply with what the written regulations are. They've got 48 hours to remove it.
So, so you say there's 10 of these that went out.
Mhm.
That'd be something we could see, right? We could see that, get those. But in that vein, if you're gonna give one person one, you have to give all 10 people one, right? Kind of where you're coming from.
So after each event,
I'm just in this particular deal.
After each-
I see this as being a little frivolous, but, in the same vein, if you're gonna do some neighbor down the street that is not in compliance and whatever, I guess, if you're gonna do a one for one, you need to do one for all, right?
so
Probably.
after a snowstorm, after 48-hour opportunity to clear that snow, she goes out. So we're not shortchanging the time amount.
I'm not talking about that, but.
And then by sending out 10 different letters, that's exactly what she's been doing, of saying, these are 10 locations that she has identified that are questionable.
Okay.
And so those letters went out to start that dialogue.
So my point is, if you know somebody like Vic, which I believe, and I've seen for 21 years, does shovel the sidewalks, this is obviously happened, this isn't a 48-hour event anymore because the snowplow came in later and shoved it in there, it looks like to me.
That becomes a new
And
event.
so I get that you can't be out there policing all the time, whatever. You go 48 hours and you see 10 things. You send them to all 10 people. My question really relates to the next time 48 hours and the snowplow kicks this stuff in there because they're going to go up the road and do it again and again and again. He'll get another. So the city's not going to fine him when somebody that's actively doing this, right?
Yeah.
But my point is that you can't discriminate who you give these letters to.
Well, yeah, we don't want to give anybody special treatment, nor do we want to target anybody. I mean, there's a balance, there's a reasonableness to it.
So there's no.
So here's the things that can affect the snow there, another snow event. So what happens if they've got 48 hours to clear it and another snow event shows up on top of the oldest snow event? How do you tell the difference? I agree with Vic on the snow plowing, that the plow has come through 3 or 4 times that same day and has pushed the snow and his guy's pushing it off. The other thing that can happen, I'm not saying it happened in this scenario, is maybe somebody was tasked with clearing it off, but it didn't get done. And so we're documenting things as best we can to have that dialogue, to have that communication. What if that wasn't cleared off very well? I think, Vic, you would appreciate knowing that it wasn't cleared off and that you had directed somebody from your organization.
Well, that's pretty much my job to know that it got done.
Yeah.
Because of this situation, because I participated in the rewrite of the ordinance then, at the new event, when the snowplow pushed it in, it's another 48 hours, am I right? Is that what my understanding was when we were doing it? That became a new event. It got pushed off by the snowplow. It's another 48 hours to get the snowplow stuff off.
Yeah, I don't remember that specific conversation. The challenge with that is we don't know when that snowplow came and pushed that snow back in there. To me, it's all about having a reasonable conversation of saying, hey, wait a minute, I know you stopped by my property. It looks like the snowplow came and pushed snow on my thing. Thank you for the warning letter, but this is the explanation I have as to why it looks the way it does.
Okay, but there's no date on the photograph either. We don't know what the old picture was.
There's a date in your letter, I think.
Yeah, the date on my letter, but it's not on the photograph. It's from a different day.
Good.
I don't know when the photograph was taken, but they usually got a picture on them. But irregardless, that 48-hour period almost covered with 4 times or 3 times that the snowplow pushed it back on. We cleared it 4 times that week. And that 48 hours goes another 48, another 48, another 48. We only went 5 days total. So, there's 6 days worth of plow, 6 days worth of grace period, 6 days worth of 48 hours and we only had 5 days of time.
Right.
So there couldn't have been a time in there where it was required to have been cleared. It wasn't within the 24-hour, 48-hour period. I'm just making my point that there is some reasonableness, and yes, we have to be able to do it. And I also do know that stuff happens, like you said, and if that did, I don't believe that it did because it was Monday morning, and if it did, this is fresh plowed, and see, the day before it wasn't plowed. That was on Sunday afternoon. So, but also the idea that, I lost my thought.
I think the plow can push it in, the wind can howl around here just as well as it can out in the prairie. The wind pushes a lot of snow around. Our guys are pushing snow. The only reason why they're pushing snow on streets is because the wind's blowing. There's no new snow coming down. It's just blowing around and coming onto the streets. You know that as well as anybody.
But that understanding, I thought that's, Bill, you were in some of those meetings, was that an understanding?
But some of these things, how are we going to track those?
That's not my job.
Okay.
That's
So
this person's job, I
how are we
guess.
supposed to track whenever the plow goes past or?
Put a
if
game
the
cam
wind
on it
is
or something,
blowing?
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
But it's
that's
not
why I
my
say,
job.
all it boils down to is having a reasonable
So
conversation
going
to
forward,
address some concerns.
There's, it's not like 1 warning, 2 warning, then you get a fine.
No.
I mean, that's not, you're gonna be discretionary about that.
There needs to just be a conversation of reasonableness. Here's the thing. We don't want to fine at all, ever. okay? Unless you've got what I consider a gross violator that just says, I'm going to Florida, good luck with my property, I'm not gonna invest a dime in snow removal. That's where you've got some enforcement challenges there. We just want it plowed. We just want the sidewalks cleared. That's our end goal. And even by issuing a citation with a fine attached to it doesn't magically make the snow go away. The snow needs to still be shoveled off by somebody. And so writing a ticket isn't the answer in order to get the complaints you're seeking out in the real world.
So I appreciate you bringing this up, Victor. I'll go ahead and let you speak. You were a little bit over the 2 minutes.
Yep,
but-
that's what I said it was gonna be, but I've not been speaking the whole 2 minutes, but what about the city? Who notifies the city? Now, I know stuff happens, and people are sick, and people are gone, and maybe this person that is taking the time and energy to go skulking around looking at everybody's sidewalks, maybe could help shovel some sidewalks on the day when it was 80,
So-
90 hours before the
So-
city got their sidewalks done.
So Victor, we appreciate your comments. I understand that you received this as the letter was read and as we've discussed in this meeting. It's a reminder of what the process is. Now, there could be extenuating circumstances that cause this to occur. As Brett outlined, the process is to review all the properties in town. We can't be selective over this person usually shovels, but they didn't this time, or something happened this time, or there was ice that built up. It's just to apply consistency across the board.
This was new topic, though.
So,
The city not doing theirs after 3 days last week.
okay, so that's a different topic.
That's what I say, it's a
This
new topic.
right
I'm done with
here-
this other topic, thank you. for your
Okay, okay,
consideration.
and thank you for that, so.
On to the next topic, what's
So
the
you've got more
explanation
than
there?
one thing. So
Yes.
I will be addressing it later in the meeting, however, we are short-staffed in the city. We are down 2 people in our Public Works Department, and as a result, the city has had to prioritize what gets done first. All right, with a limited amount of people, there's just so much you can do, okay? So that being the reason why certain things are prioritized higher than other things, and it takes longer to get other things done. Now, I'm not gonna get into an argument with you about how that's done or how the prioritization was determined, but I will tell you that the roadways are the first things that are taken into consideration.
But everybody acknowledges that the city was way past, almost, yeah. like
I'm not
90
speaking to
hours.
that, I'm explaining to you what's happening
You know that.
with our city information, okay, with our city works department and with our city staff. Again, I will address it later in the meeting. I believe we had someone else that had a comment. Wanna please come up to the front.
Randy Berger, Warriors Work in West Calorie. Here lately, I've been spending a lot of time watching, working with the P&Z and the city council. I've been fighting billboards and electronic signs since the day I walked into this town. And I'm just saying that it seems like we have a hassle with signs already before we even enforce this. So I'm just asking everybody, let's take a good look at this, because electronic signs are coming, they aren't going away.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Berger. Any other public comment?
Are we getting?
You need to come up to the front, please, and identify yourself.
My name is Darrell Graves. I'm a former practicing attorney out of Montana and California. I'm here tonight, though not in a legal capacity. I'm here as a friend of Patty Huskers of the Hill City Cafe. My question is are we talking about her issue now?
Nope, this
Okay,
is for
so-
anything that's not on the agenda.
Okay, that was my question.
Yep.
So when her issue comes up, I
Yep,
have to come back and
yep.
speak. Thank you.
Yep. Any other public comment?
Thank you, by the way. I'm
You're
sorry.
welcome, you're welcome. Okay, all right, hearing none, we'll move on to action items. So the newly inserted action item 6A1, pay for the city administrator's salary. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to pay the city administrator.
There's a motion on the table.
I will second.
There's a second to the motion. Roll call vote, please, Stacia.
John Johnson,
No.
Steve Jarvis,
Yes.
Jim Peterson,
Yes.
Bill Miner,
Yes.
3-1, motion carries. Action item 6A2, compensation for Connie Walters, Planning and Zoning Commissioner. Any discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to pay Ms. Walters there.
Motion Alderman Jarvis, do we have a second?
I will second.
Second Alderman Minor, roll call vote please, Stacia.
Jim Peterson,
Yes.
Bill Miner,
Yes.
John Johnson,
No.
Steve Jarvis.
Yes.
Okay, action item 6A3, fees for attorney Bettman Hoag Law Firm. These will be the last fees that we see from the law firm of Bettman and Hoag due to the resignation. While there is one amount that it totals $693.87, I'd like to refer back to the bill breakdown, as I believe in the case of charges for work done with regard to Sunset Creek, we need to have some discussion with regard to the appropriateness of all of the aldermen voting on that. So when it comes to Sunset Creek, which is $231.87, does anyone have a conflict of interest with that?
Yeah, I won't be voting on that,
Okay, all right.
as you know.
Yep. With that being said, is there any additional conversation? I'll entertain a motion to address $231.87 in payment of that bill from the law offices of Bettman Hoag. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion from Alderman Jarvis. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, Alderman Minor. Roll call vote, please, Stacia.
Question.
Bill Miner,
Yes.
John Johnson, John Johnson,
No.
Jim Peterson,
Abstain.
Steve Jarvis.
Yes.
Okay, with a 2 and an abstain to 1, motion carries for that portion of the bill. Now, I'd entertain a motion for the remaining $462.
I'll make the motion.
Motion Alderman Jarvis, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second Alderman Minor, roll call vote please.
John Johnson,
No.
Bill Miner,
Yes.
Jim Peterson,
Yes.
Steve Jarvis.
Yes.
Motion carries 3 to 1. All right, action item 6A, 209 Main Street, appeal of removal order for non-conforming electronic sign. Brett, can you please?
Yep. So Danny Shade is not here this evening, so I'm going to fill in for her and explain this item. In the packet is a kind of a historical timeline of what has occurred with this sign over the years. It starts back in 2009 and it goes to the present day. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to give you a synopsis of kind of what the key items are that I feel exist in this action item. So back in late 2009, early 2010, there was a request by the Hill City Cafe and their owners to put up an electronic sign and on their property for the purposes of advertisement. And I do have some photos here, and I'll show these kind of as we move along here. This picture is from 2008, and you can see that there's only the regular Hill City Cafe sign is up there. I'm going to dim these lights so we can see it a little bit better. So over the course of 2009, 2010, there was an approval of the electronic sign to be placed on the front facade of the building. There were a couple of tweaking things that needed to be done in order to get it to conform. And so those were addressed back then. This next photo I'm showing is 2011. And I know the sun is right here, so it's a little bit difficult. So that's the sun right over here. It's kind of, the sign is angled, so it starts here and kind of goes away from you. So that sign, that's a picture from August of 2011. And how do we know it's August? A couple of things. It's noted here on the bottom here, August 2011, but you might notice something else is going on. So we're obviously in August. And at that time, it appears in this image just, and we'll talk about this later, it appears that the sign is functional I know that that sign is electronic and it does some fireworks and scrolling of text and whatnot. So in my opinion, that sign is functioning and in operation back in 2011. Fast forward to 2014, the Planning and Zoning Commission and then ultimately the City Council adopted some amendments to our signing ordinance, our sign ordinance, and made some changes to the Central Business District, which is this entire block is Central Business District from on Elm Street or on Main Street from Elm down to McGregor is considered Central Business District. We also adopted some other things like a transition sign zone area and whatnot. The old code, when this electronic sign was first put up, and this is something I hadn't really thought of until the past couple days, there was a provision in our old sign code that talked about you can have an electronic sign, but it can't flash and blink and whatnot unless it displays the date, the time, and the temperature on there, and then it is excluded, so it could flash and do fireworks and all kinds of fun things. So you had the ability back before 2014 to have an electronic sign in Central Business District as long as it flashed and whatnot, and that it conveyed the date, time, and temperature. In 2014, two changes were made, significant changes. One, electronic signs were prohibited from this block, meaning that you couldn't put up any new ones. The other thing that went away is the ability to have date, time, and temp and still have flashing. That went away. And the thought process behind that is if a sign is malfunctioning or isn't maintained or calibrated properly, you'll get a 20-degree day that actually says it's 80 out, or it's really 12:45 in the afternoon, but the sign reads 3:40 in the morning, or the date is wrong. And so, I remember, way back in the day, that was kind of a standard thing where if you had an electronic sign, they wanted it to be a public information where you could just look up at the bank and say, oh, it's 1 o'clock and it's today's date. Well, that's kind of lost its luster in the sense that unless the signs are taken care of on a regular basis, you don't want to communicate that information. Okay. Now, there's still signs that do that and convey that information, but even in Rapid, there's signs, electronic signs right next to each other that convey a different temperature. Okay. So that went away, but also in this block, electronic signs were prohibited. Now, in the case of the cafe, they had already gotten permission for their sign before the changes of 2014. So at this time, after 2014, they weren't required to remove their sign. They could still have their sign. It would be a non-conforming sign that predated the new amendments to the code. But anybody new who wanted to put up a sign couldn't. Okay. So that's why it's been allowed to exist from 2014 up until today. So if I look at the next image, this is of 2013, and this appears to be August as well, but there are no bikers here, so I'm assuming it's after the rally, because usually the rally happens early in the month. So at this point, this is August 2013, it does not appear that the sign is active. I don't know, I personally don't know, and I think only Patty, the owner, knows the maintenance status of it. Whether it's operable or not, it was not reflecting or projecting or displaying a message. And
Date
whether,
on
now,
that again? I'm sorry, date on that again?
August 2013. So whether it had the ability to present a message, I don't know what the status is. That's somebody else's personal business. It was not projecting or displaying a message to the public. Okay. The next, and I'll just loop to the next image that I have. This is May of 2018. And there's the sign. Looks like we're getting some rain. And again, the sign is not displaying a message. Again, I cannot make a judgment call whether the sign is operable, meaning that it could be turned on. I just know that that sign hadn't been displaying a message for several years, okay? So the question before you tonight isn't that this is an illegal sign because the sign code changed. The question on this is now that it hasn't been displaying a message for several years. The question was brought up, okay, of if this sign isn't projecting or displaying a message, there are rules that state if it's not displaying a message for 12 continuous months, then there is a definition in the sign code at the state level and within our own municipal code that triggers what we call an abandoned sign. Okay, it's a sign that isn't being actively used. So our code enforcement officer sent a letter back in October 31st of 2018 to convey that this sign hadn't been in operation and that it was subject to being considered an abandoned sign. But at that point in time, so again, we're looking at October, November of 2018, there was a dialogue that occurred that said, look, if you get it up to speed by the first of the year, then the sign can remain. Okay? The sign can't be designated as an abandoned sign unless it's been, the owner has been notified and then 12 more months occur without any change of status, that it then becomes an abandoned sign. Okay? So this October 31st date of 2018 was essentially the clock started ticking on that date for the 12 months. And it's perfectly appropriate for us to say, look, get it working or else the time keeps ticking and it's a continuous clock. And once it hits 12 months, then it's going to be classified as an abandoned sign. Okay? So that was communicated out. In 2019, and I don't know if I have the dates with me right here or not. I think I do. There was discussions this past summer. We had a lot of discussions about the phase 1 construction, the phase 2 construction of the cafe was going on. We had a conversation about the awnings, but the sign conversation, this particular sign, there wasn't really any conversation brought up again. If I can just finish, please. There wasn't any conversation that I'm aware of that occurred on this sign until probably about October, November. And it was brought to the Planning and Zoning Commission about the Phase 3 building permit for the remodel of the cafe. And so if you go through the records of that, there was a lot of changes that went on with the cafe, not only with the contractor who was doing the work, but some of the interior design and whatnot going on. So there was a desire by the Planning and Zoning Commission and our code enforcement officer to refresh the information, to refresh the plans. So the contractor for the cafe, and it's Wally, I forget Wally's last name. Hunsaker, thank you. Came to the commission on November 4th of 2019 to discuss the Phase 3 building permit. The end result of that conversation was that Phase 3 building permit was issued by the Planning and Zoning Commission. The cafe was not charged any additional building permit fees. It helped to refresh the intent of what construction was going to take place. And along with the approval of the building permit, there were 3 stipulations that were contingencies that were placed upon that permit. The first contingency was that this electronic sign was to be removed. Okay, and I don't believe Patty, the owner of the cafe, was present at that meeting, but her representative contractor was. The second contingency was that we needed more detailed sketches of how the roof was going to be constructed going forward. The third contingency was that we needed better communication with the contractor for inspection purposes. As we get to certain stages in construction, we've got to do framing construction, insulation, all of those types of things to confirm that things are progressing appropriately. So that conversation occurred, the building permit was issued. There was no, I don't know of any concerns that were voiced at that time. And that it became a condition of that Phase 3 permit for the remodel that that sign would come down. Now, it was about a month later, a little over a month later, there was another letter that was sent out to the cafe referencing that the sign was not working and that the sign needed to be removed, and it was a condition of the building permit. And so that was in December, that letter was December 6th, 2019. Now, if we fast forward to, and then there was another letter sent December 17th concerning the sign. And all of these are in your packet. Then the matter was brought before the Planning and Zoning Commission. So remember, the permit was approved to have those contingencies on it. It passed with the Planning and Zoning Commission. Essentially, there was a question, this non-conforming sign was called into question at the last P&Z meeting, which occurred just last week on Monday. And some good dialogue of, why wasn't the sign up? The sign is obviously, all advertising is going to try to draw customers into any business. I think there's been an understanding or a recognition that this sign hasn't been operating, has not been displaying a message, and I know there's a question about a missing remote or some electrical stuff that was going on.
And it has been plugged in.
The fact remains that it had been inoperable or not operable for quite some time. The end result of that discussion with the Planning and Zoning was a 2-2 tie vote. They only had 4 members present at the Planning and Zoning. Two voted to reaffirm the building permit requirements with the contingency. 2 voted against that requirement. So essentially, this is appealing the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission. But I think you need to be careful here in the sense that you're dealing with 2 things. One is it's not, the sign is there and it was grandfathered in, okay? But it still has to follow the rules going forward about being abandoned or not. That is not a grandfathering thing. And so that's a question tonight. The other question is the contingency onto the building permit. So I just want, my goal is to make sure that whatever the decision is that we have a clear path or clear instruction going forward of how this sign gets addressed. If you as a council determine that the sign should be removed, I would appreciate a timeline in which that sign should be removed. Are you going to give a month, 2 weeks, 3 months? And that expectation is that it's gone. If the sign is upheld, that it can remain, I would do the same and ask that it needs to be brought up to speed so that it's not conveying inaccurate information, that it be shut off now, be maintenanced, and then it can go live and display the message once it's fixed. Because again, at the end of the day, we're looking for code compliance, okay? Now, with these letters from last year, over 12 months ago, that was the key, in my opinion, of saying, look, we just want compliance. You are in jeopardy of losing your sign if you don't take proactive steps to maintenance what you have. And so that opportunity existed for that sign to get repaired, and it didn't. And so now it's in violation of state law. These are state laws that oversee what we're talking about tonight. And so, with the vote, I think the most important thing is that we get the answer that we need, but the guidance that we need to follow up with it. Because, at the end of the day, we want to work with people, but again, if it's a violation of our municipal code or the state code, it should be upheld. Okay? That's all I have for right now.
So Brett, before we go any further, this will be opened up for conversation and discussion. Patty will be given the opportunity and her representatives, as well as the rest of the audience. I understand that this can be an issue that can be quite emotional at times, so I just want to make sure that I remind everyone that the expectation is that you present yourself respectfully, okay? Please stick to the issues. Don't bring it down to a personal level. Respect when the person has the floor and the ability to be able to talk. Don't talk over people. And let's just see what we can do to bring this to an amicable resolution. Okay? Brett, go ahead.
So at this time, I don't have any other information to share with you. I think it's appropriate for Patty to have some time to respond and give her information. And then after that, I would request it being open to the public. And I do have a written comment that was asked to be read, and I'll do that later after Patty's had a chance to speak.
Okay.
I have one question for you.
Sure.
You say 11/4/19, it was the desire of the Development Service Coordinator to have, to look at the building permit. What was the original building permit for? For the whole project? Or for one phase, two phases, 3 phases?
Yeah, the original building permit was, it was known at that time from the first building permit that it was essentially a 3-phase construction. And it was set up that way because a certain area of the cafe had to be worked on now. And that was, the first one was the kitchen, the new kitchen, so they could build that. Once phase 1 was over and the new kitchen is built, they can move the old kitchen into the new kitchen.
Okay,
then they can remodel the bathrooms and turn the old kitchen into the bathrooms and whatnot.
Was the original building permit for the whole construction, all phases?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
So the reason it was brought up again, to gain some clarity on it, was because the contractor had changed and that there were some changes within what the intent, not the generic intent of the project, but some of the specific intent of the remodel of it, of exactly what was going. Because as time has marched through with this project, and I forget when that original permit was issued, it's been probably 2.5 years ago, things have changed, and so we wanted to get a better idea of what those changes were.
Was the original permit still in conformance? Was it, I mean, is there anything reason why it would no longer be in effect?
The information in it was outdated and it didn't reflect the results of the phase 1 and 2.
Good for 1 year in construction, right?
Right, and it had been administratively extended at least once, I'm thinking twice. I don't know all the specifics on that building permit. I know it was administratively extended, but the phase 3, starting the phase 3, the information and the changes that had been made or the renovations that had made to phase 1 and 2 led us to a different path, and we just wanted to get on the same page with the intention of the phase 3 work.
So the new building permit was a required permit then?
It was brought to the planning and zoning. It was felt that that was a necessary item to successfully move forward with the remodel.
Okay.
And planning and zoning agreed that that was a good idea.
So we have to get Pride to, they'll give you my building permit if I take my
So
sign down?
Patty, can you hold on just a second? And you'll be able to come up and you'll be able to talk.
Yeah,
So
the-
any other questions?
The sign was a separate issue in the sense that back in 2018, that issue was brought up to the cafe of saying the sign isn't operating, it's not displaying a message.
Right.
If you
That was
continue.
that was the first notice.
Yeah, and it in no way coincided with this phase 3 revise of the phase 3 permit. So those two aren't tied together.
No, they are,
So we're-
the.
Well, they are
you
later
get that
on.
Together.
Yeah, but the initial spark of it.
Prior to that is already a notice.
Right, and it was essentially saying, look, get the sign up and running so that the 12-month clock doesn't start. Because now you're officially have been notified that it's non-functioning, it's not displaying something. And that was independent of the conversation of the rest of the building permit. The culmination is compliance of saying, okay, we have a building permit, we want to make sure we're on the same page with as to what's going to be constructed. And then that contingency came in as part of that, so they converged at the end there. But that was after that sign had been noticed that it was subject to a 12-month abandoned sign designation. That Phase 3 building permit was after that 12-month had already expired.
Yeah, it looks like it was 11/4 that they went ahead and.
Right. So it was on its
Desired,
own. So it was
building permit.
Yeah, at that 12, when the clock hit 12 months, that sign was no longer valid. And so now it became
From the
an
notice
issue.
on October 31st, 2018.
Now it became an issue of a violation associated to a property that had a building permit.
So would you gentlemen like to hear from Ms. Huska first before you entertain in any additional
Yeah,
conversation?
thank you. I just wanted a clarification on that.
There's so many problems with what the city's done here. I'm not sure it's even necessary for Patty to even come up and talk. I'm looking at the October 31st, 2018 letter that you referred to as notice of the 12-month period. Nowhere does it say in there, you have 12 months to get this sign working. It says you got 30 days to take it down. So I don't understand how that's notice. Okay? If you go back to the Hill City Municipal Code, it says an abandoned sign is a sign that has ceased to be used for display of sign copy or as otherwise defined by South Dakota state law. I don't remember any conversation in P&Z or anywhere about 12 months South Dakota's codified law 312963.2, which is determination of an abandoned sign, until I brought it up at Monday's P&Z meeting. Then suddenly that's entered into this conversation. Chapter 31 deals with highway signs. It has nothing to do with city signs.
So it's an incorrect reference then, in your opinion?
Our definition says, or as otherwise defined by state law. So they're using the definition of abandoned sign. Ours says if a sign structure that has ceased to be used for display of sign copy. That's the only thing in our municipal code. Or as otherwise defined by South Dakota state law. So we go to South Dakota law, chapter 31, for the definition of an abandoned sign. And it says abandoned sign is a sign or sign structure that is blank, obliterated, or displays obsolete advertising material for a period in excess of 12 continuous months. Okay? Nowhere in our code does it say that.
So the reference,
Except that it does reference
yeah.
South Dakota.
There's
state
quite a
law.
few of our municipal codes that we reference state law. We don't necessarily verbatim reflect what the rules are, because state law can change. That's the challenge with writing municipal code, is that the state can change their language. And so if we don't change it along with the state, we're going to be out of sync with what they're saying. So when that sign code went in, and just let me explain. So back in 2014, when we adopted these sign amendments, I personally wrote a lot of the language. And I remember this section of the code that I specifically wanted to reference South Dakota state law. because it did have that language within it. And I wanted to attach our code to that code. And if that code changes, it doesn't invalidate our code. That's the way I wrote it.
Right.
Okay? So just because we are copying the state code doesn't mean it's invalid. We copy Rapid City code in some effects as well when it comes to construction standards. So
the state law says that it's abandoned sign for a period in excess of 12 continuous months. Then if you go to chapter 312963.2, determination of abandoned sign, it says any abandoned sign as defined by 312962 is unlawful and subject to the provisions of chapter 3129. The 12-month period for determining if a sign is abandoned commences upon the department's notification of violation to the sign owner. So when did we notify them that they have 12 months to bring the sign into compliance? You've already told me you gave them notice with an October 31st, 2018 letter. That letter says nowhere in there you have to get it working. It says that you have to take it down within 30 days.
So
Then if you go to the narrative.
Hey, can I interrupt?
No.
Can I interrupt
Then
just
if
for
you
a
go to the
second?
narrative here, it says applicant has been given 2 months in 2018 to bring the sign into operational status, and this was not accomplished by the deadline of January 1st, 2019. So I have a real problem with you picking and choosing parts of the law you want to follow, but not following all the law. We don't have a procedure. You're putting up a snapshot of 2 seconds when the Google car drives by and you say, this is proof that sign isn't working. Where does it say in our code how many hours, how many days, how many months, any of it, it has to run in a 12-month period? So if she plugs it in and it runs for 2 minutes at midnight, is that good? Nowhere is any of that defined in our code. So I'm disturbed by the process. The city, in my opinion, has a right and a duty to due process. The city has the resources to know the law and to be able to follow it. It shouldn't be Patty's responsibility to go out and research state law and try to figure out what applies and what doesn't. And so I think everything the city has done is invalid. And as far as I'm concerned, it's not an illegal sign. It's a non-conforming sign. And until which time the city follows a proper procedure and gives Patty her due rights, I don't think there's anything to talk about here.
It's typically referred to as a legal non-conforming sign.
Yes.
Because it hasn't been determined.
And I think you've got a problem because they're changing the qualifications for the building permit.
Well, they went ahead, I get that there's been contractor issues, troubles, time frames, and yet I'm hearing we got a building permit for the whole project, and then all of a sudden we desire to have another building permit. The desire would be to just get up to speed on the original building permit is what I would think. But in that desire, they went ahead and put in extra things, to one of them being get rid of the sign. So I think this is an issue where have the attorney look at it.
The sign is working now?
So I observed the sign was active. It was like a Monday in December. I don't remember the
As soon
date.
as Dan told me to turn it on, I turned it on.
Please, one person at a time.
Yeah, it was like the second Monday in December, I think, the second or third. Because I was like, whoa, I haven't seen this sign operate quite
I
some
mean,
time.
I've seen it working too, so.
So I just want to address on what Bill was saying real quick. So Bill, you'll be surprised, but I'm agreeing with you in my statement that I'm going to say, okay? We're here to work through this, okay? I don't,
It's so
I know you
frustrating.
have concerns, and I agree with you, but, so here's the thing, the October 31st letter is the notice, okay? Whether you like the language within the notice or not, it's still the notice, okay? So that's fact number one. You may disagree with that point, that's fine, but we need to move on with the second point, which is, I'm agreeing with you, could the city do a better job of explaining the 12-month requirement? And I'm gonna agree with you, yes. It's a short answer, it's a simple answer, yes. One, this is the notice. Secondly, could we have done a better job of explaining it? Yes. But thirdly, the conversation that occurred, according to our code enforcement officer, that occurred with the property owner is, please get this going by the 1st of January. I know you're talking about the 30 days. Because the clock, once this October 31st thing hits, it's going to start the clock ticking for the 12th month. So the whole idea, the whole premise of it is, please get your sign working because we don't want to take this any further.
Shouldn't have this stated that?
It could be a better letter.
Yep.
I'm not denying that at all.
Because all this, I already have a case of my own where people are denying what they said. And, unless it's written.
Right.
Was the October 31st, 2018 letter sent certified mail? Can you prove that she got it?
So in the packet, I know there's one certified letter that was mailed and it was returned to sender unclaimed, unable to forward.
That's got a date of 2019 on it.
Yeah. So I don't know on that one. I'd have to check that one.
So the city can't even prove that she got the letter to start the notice.
I don't have that information in front of me.
So the sign is working. And you said it is not, what does it need to be done to bring it up to code?
So it
You
needs
said something
to,
about what time, date, and all that.
yeah. So with the state code that we're referencing, the core word that applies to this sign is that it's blank. Sign is blank. It's not conveying a message. Okay. So in order for compliance, it should be working in the sense of displaying a message, and it should have content that is accurate on it. Okay. I've been told, and I don't know this for a fact, so this is hearsay, that whatever it is, whatever message it's conveying now is menu items that occurred back in 2011 with prices from 2011.
And I'm selling everything the same price.
Yeah, so if she's making that adjustment, that's great. I'm also hearing from the public that it's displaying inaccurate, temperature, whatever. I don't know the whole display that is programmed into there to tell you what is accurate or not. Those are the two things that I've heard and I've seen myself, but I haven't sat there and watched the whole menu reader go through its complete cycle. So it's just got to be current, relevant, and accurate
It
information.
says I'm open at 6 o'clock, 7 days a week. Welcome to Hill City.
Kathy, you gotta come up here.
Yeah, would you-
Yeah.
I think it's time for you and
Can't-
whoever else you wanna have time, unless
Sure,
you guys
no,
got.
I don't mind.
I'd like to hear.
Yeah, go ahead.
Danny came down to the
So
cafe.
please identify yourself.
Patricia Huska, Hill City Cafe.
Thank you.
Danny came down to the Hill City Cafe and came to talk to me in the back room. And it was about the awning, trying to keep the awning. And then she came and she
Remember
told me, it was the end of August, because she told me if I didn't have that awning down by the 1st of September, the state was gonna come and tear it down.
August of 19.
Yep, August of, 19.
This last year.
And the state was gonna come and tear it down. I said, there's no way they can, So then we were talking about that, and she goes, oh, go talk to Jim Peterson and Johnny Johnson, and maybe give him a pizza, and maybe you'll be able to keep your awning. Well, that's bull, I don't work like that. I never went nowhere with it.
Why was that comment made?
To make a deal, to keep my awning. That's where it started out. So then she whispered to me in my ear and says, if I get my sign going before the 1st of the year, I could keep my sign. So I plugged it in August, the end of August, about 15th of September, 20th of September. The electric people at construction, they plugged it in to do the wiring. Well, he didn't complete the wiring, so I have no wires to plug it in. So I ran an extension cord to plug it in, and I've had it running since.
It's been running since when?
Since probably the middle of September.
2019?
Yep. And it's been on and off all through since I put it on, since 2009. When I redid the electric work in 2012 or 2013 in the front part, it was working, and it was on and off, on and on and on and off from this date.
Is there like a switch you turn
There's
it
a
on?
switch, yep, there's a switch inside the cafe, and you turn it on, and it comes on. And if you don't turn it on, it don't come on.
It's obviously a programmable sign, correct?
Yeah, and I have lost the remote when I remodeled, so I can't get in there to change it. So I have to, when I get to doing the awning, I'll get the serial number, then I can probably get the remote, and then I can change the date or the time, whatever's off. I don't know if that's a big deal for, with the temperature, I don't see that anything. But to me, they're harassing me. One, I'll give you your building permit if you take your sign down. That's wrong. Two, if I can keep my awning if I go buy pizza for other council meetings. This is wrong. This is bull. I'm sick of their harassment. I'm done with it. Because to me, that's what they're doing. They're harassing me. I'm open 7 days a week, 365 days a day. Every single day I'm open. I'm closed 3 days out of the year. Christmas, Easter, and Thanksgiving. Otherwise, I'm open every single day. And I'm just sick of it, you know. If it ain't one thing, it's another. Take my permit away. All I did is put a $1 million business to operate in Hill City. How much sales tax you guys get out of that, you know? Leave me alone. I'm trying to mind my own business and do business. I'm open every single day. If I wasn't open, we would have nothing in Hill City. There's like 4 of them on the block of Hill City right now open. You know, I'm open. I'm struggling. I'm there. And I think it's wrong that they're harassing me every time I turn around. I'm sick of it. I'm just trying to do my business and mind my own business.
Anything else that you'd like to add regarding any conversations in 2018, 2019?
I don't recall the permit, the sign, or whatever they sent me. I don't remember seeing any of that, so I can't say that. But she came down to me the end of August of 2019 and told me that I had to get my sign going to keep my sign because they're changing the ordinance. So what did I do? I got it going. It wouldn't be probably going because I wouldn't know anything about it if she didn't tell me. She told me to do it. I did it.
So, say that again. Say that one more time.
In August, end of August, right before September,
Yep.
she came to me, and Crystal, my daughter, was there, said, you need to get that sign going because they're changing the ordinance, and if you want to keep that sign, you got to get it going. So I did. I got it going right away.
In
And I've been
reference
harassed.
to this proposed
This
new sign.
new sign permit, you know? To me, they're harassing me. You know, I'm minding my own business. You know, it's
Okay.
going.
Gentlemen, any other questions for Patty?
Now, did you have somebody else that wanted to talk?
Yes. I'd like to.
Are you asking for the public?
Excuse me?
Nope, not yet.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yep.
My name is Darrell Graves, and as I stated before, I'm a former practicing attorney in the state of California and the state of Montana. I'm not here in the legal capacity representing Patty Huska, but I am here as her friend and relative. So, Bill, if I could ask, may I ask questions or of the different members? Could I look at that Montana, or that law that you quoted? Because it seems to me that's important. I made some notes as you guys were talking, and as you were giving your spiel here. I think it's unfair to take a couple of pictures over years and say, this sign hasn't been working. That sign has always been able to be working. And it doesn't say that it has to be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year. You could flip it on for 2 seconds, as you stated, Mr. Minor, and that would be good enough. What if they closed the business, during the winter like everybody else does in Hill City, pretty much? Not everybody else, but keeps his places open. But a lot of them, I notice, are closed in the wintertime. They wouldn't be required to take those down just because they close up and they're not turned on. So how much use is required? It's really unknown, isn't it? So, we call that a violation of state law. That's what you were referring to, Mr. McMacken, is it? It says, any abandoned sign is defined as unlawful as subject to the provisions of chapter 3129. The 12-month period for, that's not what I wanted to read. I wanted to read the part where it said the 12-month period. And I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to review this. I just spoke to Patty about this 3 hours ago and just barely got into it. But I did want to look at some of this. It's the notice that you say that she said that she didn't receive that notice in 2018. And the notice for 2019, he said, was returned because it wasn't accepted. In that notice, and I don't have that notice in front of me either, but it doesn't say the 12 months. That it hasn't been operable for 12 months. It would be incumbent upon the city of Hill City to prove that it hasn't been operable for 12 months. So that's one thing for you to think about as you vote. There's another thing I wrote on here. This doesn't seem to be an appeal. As I understand, the vote was 2-2 in the zoning commission. That doesn't require an appeal from that. That's a non-issue because it was a tie vote, as I understand it.
So if I can explain that, because that's a
Go
great
ahead.
question. That's a great question. I think there needs to be a clarity on that. So you're right. The motion was to reaffirm the requirement of the building permit that the sign come down prior to construction on phase 3.
Okay.
So effectively, the tie vote did not change that requirement. Okay, so it essentially, there was a great discussion, a great debate about that requirement, and then it ended up in a tie vote 2-2. So essentially, you go back to the original building permit where it was a requirement. So what Patty is essentially appealing is that building permit requirement to remove that sign.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
And I'd like to speak to that just a little bit. Seems to me like we had a building permit. The building permit said you could build this building. It was approved by the city of Hill City. And speaking to Mr. Peterson, I can see that he's uneasy about that, and I'm uneasy about that. Because you're coming in and you're saying to her now, we want to take another look at this. And that might be within the city's purview to say we want to take another look at it. But once I have a building permit that's issued to me, I can force that upon you even though we may not like it. So, but then to add additional consideration in there saying, now we want you to do this, we want you to remove that sign or we're not going to give you this permit. That's not right, and that's not fair. I talked about how long it needs to operate. I don't know, and maybe I have a question about these changes to the city zoning, the sign zoning. That hasn't passed yet, has it? So
No update since 2014.
pardon.
2014 was put in place, but nothing since
We're
then.
working off the 2014 update.
Correct.
Okay? So that's what I'm looking at here in front of me.
Yep.
And I appreciate Mr. Minor bringing up at the beginning that this was not to talk about an illegal sign. It's a legal, non-conforming sign, according to these regulations here that you have in front of you. This sign operates, I understand, by a switch right up there in the front of the cafe. How many times it's been turned on since 2011? I couldn't tell you. 10? 100? You can't tell me either, can you? So nobody can tell us.
All I can tell you is I have not seen that sign work
Well, that's
from
great.
2013 up until the first week of December.
That's
of
great.
last year.
And have you stood out there to watch that
No,
sign every day?
Sure haven't.
Well, then you can't say that the sign wasn't working.
All I can tell you is what I've observed.
Right,
Yeah.
right. You observed, how many times did you look at the sign? 100?
Hundreds.
Okay, you look at it hundreds, okay? I've looked at it, the sign was working when I looked at it sometimes it wasn't, but sometimes it was, and that's the question before you. You know, as an attorney, I'm trained to be argumentative, I'm trying not to be argumentative here. You guys need to take a look at what you've done so far, and if you decide that she needs to take the sign down, then she wants the right to appeal that. This is not the appeal. We'll appeal that decision at some point. If you decide that she needs to take the sign down, I would also ask you to continue this and not act on that until she has a chance to get an attorney and take a look at this and have somebody in front of her representing her and her best interests. So that's all I really have, unless you have any questions for me.
Nope, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Rhett, can I just ask a couple of questions? So, for clarity purposes, to make sure that everyone is clear, what we're really saying is, so the action today that's being looked at from a council perspective is to look at really the condition on the building permit that was issued, okay? And should the building permit have that condition or not have that condition? So that's really what's before the council. And then there's the question on the sign itself, okay? What is the normal process, and I don't know if you have the information with you, with regard to building permits? So, you know, do they have a certain time? If that time expires, what happens to them? And moreover, what I'm trying to understand is, so there seems to be some question with regard to another building permit being issued on this property, okay? So I'm trying to look to see, you know, what was the necessity of that? Was it a time thing? Just what that is. So can you tell us what the process is?
Right, so a building permit when issued, construction of that building or structure is supposed to commence within 90 days. Okay. And actually, I think it's 180 days.
180.
Yeah, 180 days. And then it is to be completed within a year's time. Okay. Now, we know that in a perfect world, that would be great, that everybody gets their projects done quicker than a year. And a lot of people do. This was a fundamental renovation of the cafe. And so that year came and went, and this permit had been extended previously, so that there was more time for the permit. Obviously, Patty had some operational challenges with contractors and whatnot, and she can, address any of those kinds of questions. But from the city perspective, enough had changed within the original building permit to where this is what the original building permit was, and then after the contractor changed and there's new ideas and new ways of thinking, that the reality of what was occurring out in the field or what they wanted to achieve either was different from the original, or it wasn't being effectively communicated back to the city as to where it was going.
Everything is the same except in the on.
You don't have the floor.
Our belief, our feeling, our whatever you want to call it, perception is that there was a divergent sense of the project. And so essentially, to hit the reset button, to better understand what exactly is going to go on forward, if we had the desire to quell this renovation, that's not what we do. We extended the permit. We asked that they come in and explain what the new plan is for the cafe, so that we're all on the same page. There's no additional fee that was collected for the building permit fee. We just want to get back together to understand where everybody's going and to make sure that the vision that exists for the cafe and its final look and feel still meets the code. And so it boils down to a conversation to try to achieve that. Now, obviously these contingencies came on board. One of the contingencies was the roof details. We obviously didn't have what we felt to be adequate details on what the roof construction was becoming and how that evolved. And so that is a reasonable thing of saying, look, you need to show us the engineering of how this is going to put together. The other one The inspection calls, we weren't actively being informed of when they were ready to have inspections because they've reached that next level with the framing or insulation and whatnot, that we're constantly having to go back and try to, we're the ones that have to be on top of that. Well, that's the responsibility of the contractor of saying, hey, I'm ready for insulation. Before I put insulation in, you need to make sure that the city, I call you up and have a look at what I've done before I cover it up. Once everything's okay there, I put in insulation. Then the person comes back from the city to inspect the insulation. Then it's drywall. I mean, this is a pretty standard thing. We're not too complicated here, I don't think. And if, you know, Wally's the kind of contractor that I think he is, he knows these types of steps in the process. That should have an eyeball from the city.
Okay, so my reason for that question, okay, is I hear a lot of conversation, and I agree. You know, I think that as far as the letter was concerned, to me, that's a question of, is it adequate notice, right? So there's an opinion that it's notice. There's another opinion that says it doesn't provide full detail, so it's not adequate notice. I asked the question about the building permit because I think from a process perspective, and it will help to have all of this documented, so in future situations we understand that. But just for my edification, so I can understand, so a building permit is a year. If this project has been going on then for longer than a year, when the permit becomes up, then I would assume that there's some choices or options. Again, I don't know if these are outlined in the process, but will be. Once it's determined, it sounds like historically there's been an internal administrative extension of it, right? But is that the only remedy? If planning and zoning feels that there's been material changes, and we all know there has because there were changes that needed to be made to keep that awning in place. So, then can the planning and zoning say, no, we're not just going to administratively approve an extension to this. We need to see some plans, right? So that's what I'm getting at. So I know this project has been going on for more than the first year, and I don't know timeframes.
If there are multiple extensions given on top of any other additional changes in contractor plans, design, intent, vision, whatever, it's good policy to reconnect and hit the reset button so we understand where we're at.
So am I to assume that then the last the last permit that was issued, that was tied to the expiration of one and not just because another permit was said to be needed? That's the question that I have. So, if we went the first year and then it was administratively extended and we're going into another year, is that what the catalyst was for the permit? And I think that kind of gets toward...
Well, I would say it a different way. Was permit number 1 terminated?
It is at a year.
No.
They're only good for a year.
If it's extended, it's not.
But it depends on the length of time it was extended.
Of course. And so if it was, then permit number 1 should have been terminated.
Yeah.
Well, so permit number 1 would have been extended. It would have been that extension on permit number 1.
If permit number 2 come into play, I would think if it's for the same project, it would have been terminated, permit number 1.
Since it was more than a year, it was not extended.
And so that's why I asked the question earlier, was the permit in effect? And you had indicated yes.
It had been extended, and it covered phase 1 and phase 2. I don't believe phase 3 was under construction.
And I asked that question, if it covered the whole scope of the project.
Yeah, the original permit did cover all 3 phases. So this is a brand new, this permit B219-25 was a new permit, and it only addressed phase 3.
Mm-hmm.
And that's essentially the meeting to kind of hit the reset button to say, okay, let's make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
That's a good question about the first permit. If it was closed or inactivated, I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know that answer.
I don't see where you would give a permit on top of a permit. That's the problem I'm having with it.
So you'd have a permit and extension, right? Which may not be a good practice. And at this point, I'm thinking whenever a permit expires, it completely needs to be reevaluated.
Perhaps not.
But well, then you're not doing a permit on top of a permit.
Well,
right?
if you're extending a permit, it's, the permit number one is just
Right.
extended.
But the length, so it's extended not for an indefinite period of time,
I
but
have
for
no
a
idea
period
what
of
it was
time.
extended for.
So let me finish. So if you've got your first permit that was a year, you give it another year administrative extension, and if you're at the end of that 2 years, then what do you do when that ends? Well, that's why understanding the timing on this, Jim.
Yeah, but didn't I just ask him if the permit was in play, and he said yes. So I don't understand where you're coming from. Permit number one was in play when they went and did this other permit. That's what I asked. And you said yes.
So
you believe that to be true?
The first permit was in place, and then this one just dealt with phase 3. It was essentially replacing that phase 3 element of the first permit.
And I don't have any problem with reevaluating something and all that. I think that is good practice.
Right.
But I think it also, I mean, if you're, if she's already got a permit and it's not terminated and then you need another permit, I mean, you can't have 5 permits on a project.
But that was, and I agree with you, but that was my question. So I wasn't sure, so let's say the first one went from July to July, okay? And then it got administratively extended the following July and it went to July. So this particular piece, right, was it not July yet when this happened? Or was this handling the second time when it was administratively, so we were up for another renewal? That was my question.
And I don't know the history of the, I don't know the history of the administrative.
The permit one was still in.
But I don't know that he truly knows those
Yeah,
dates.
I don't
Because he said
know
he
the
didn't know
timeline of the
timeline.
administrative extensions, because I
Right.
believe that there were administrative ones granted, plus I believe there was another visit to P and Z about 1.5 years ago. I'd have to research. I don't want to just make up facts, because.
So you're unsure?
Yeah. But here's what I do know. Phase 1 and 2 were coming to their completion, okay? Those two parts of that original permit were being completed. And then they were moving in, transitioning into the phase 3. That's why this new permit just addressed that component of it, to make sure that we were all on the same page. Because the other two pieces were concluding.
But the original one went through 1 through 3, right? Correct? All the phases?
Correct. Yep.
So we should have terminated that first one then when we made up the second one for the third phase.
Because
as long as we were satisfied with what phase 1 and 2 was complete.
Well, in effect, I mean, you could say that if phase 2 is complete, and that you could close out phase 1 and 2 of that original first permit.
But,
I mean-
again,
But still, I mean, if you want to come back and revise it or come out with a brand new for phase 3, why was it the original one then just terminated? So now you're working off of 2.
right.
Yeah. And I think it was tied to the phasing as the reason why.
but I
Can
don't-
you amend a permit? Sure.
I also don't know what was submitted on the first application. There might have been a submission that said plans for the other phases will follow under separate permits. So you really need to take a look at what happened with that permit history to make that determination. And by Brett saying, yeah, it was in effect, I'd like to see the dates. When it was administratively extended and where we sat from a time perspective, if you're going to look at the necessity to issue a new permit. But for right now.
And I think as far as the sign, if the sign is in working order right now, what needs to be done to bring it back up to speed? I mean, I'm not looking at the code, maybe you know this. Does in our code say that the date, time, and all that's got to be accurate?
No.
Or just displayed?
So that date, time, and temperature thing got removed from the code as part of the 2014 thing. That was something specifically that we took out. And the reason we took it out is because we know that that information on private property can give you bad information because of issues with the maintenance of the sign, whatnot. They can convey the wrong information. And so we said, take that out. But the other provision is that we prohibited all electronic signs in that central business district. Steve, to answer your question, I think I did earlier, if a sign, now, I'm not talking about Patty's sign right now, okay? if there's an electronic sign that has been legally or, approved through the process of the city, okay, so they got approval to put up an electronic sign, it's in good standing if it is operating with accurate information on it. Okay, it's reflecting current information, that it's not out of date. And that's really about it.
So you're really not in a position to judge her internal pricing or anything like that, right?
No,
What you'd
no,
be looking at is you'd be looking at date, time, and temperature.
Right.
You don't want to
And
tell
I thought I
somebody.
asked that earlier, what it would take to bring it up to code, and I thought that was mentioned that.
That's a previous, that was a previous
That was previous.
requirement. It's no longer.
That was previous. So the requirement's not there, right? But if you feel comfortable with having a temperature of 70 degrees when it's -2 outside, that's
I've seen other towns, other signs in
that's
town.
inaccurate information. So,
You know.
again,
I'm not gonna name any, but I've seen some other signs in
Yep.
town that,
And that's
Yeah,
exactly the reason why we removed it
Yeah.
from the code of saying, look, we really don't want an individual business putting that information out, because what if it's saying it's 11:45 and it's really 12:15 and you were supposed to be somewhere at 12?
sure.
Yep.
You're 15 minutes late.
And if Betty is, good with trying to correct things like that, I think we should listen.
so for purposes of operational understanding and process, okay, there needs to be a deeper look done at the permitting process and what happened with this one. And I'm just looking at it specifically for what is the process for permitting, what's followed, really centering around what happens when a permit expires, okay? What are the causes of expiration, and when it expires or comes close, what's our process and how do we do that and how do we renew it? Okay, on this particular one, there is a permit that has been issued, because I don't want this to hold up whatever progress can be made on the building or the rest of the restaurant. So, with that being said, the question before the council is, should that addendum be added to it, right? Should that sign coming down be required as part of it? So I would look for some type of motion that would address that piece of it.
So this is appeal of removal order of non-conforming electronic sign. So,
Which is part of
What-
the
so-
revised building permit.
which is the revised building permit that happened in November.
Right.
And the questionable notice went out in October
Of 18.
of 18, and then P&Z got on this and made some additional conditions.
Yes.
Right, so if you look at just the building permit piece of it, should that still continue to have that sign piece attached to it? So I think that's the one thing that we need a motion out of, okay? So that does relate to the building permit itself.
So what's the genesis of it being attached? It was being attached because people thought it was
It was non-conforming.
not non-conforming.
Right.
Or it was out of compliance.
Right,
So that's why it got attached.
Right.
I assume.
May I make a comment?
can we hear someone from the audience?
Yeah, you could come up to the
Yeah,
front.
I have no problem.
All right,
Again, I'm Darrell Graves. I'm here speaking on behalf of Patty Huska. One of the things that she has told me is that this idea that was added to that building permit, she immediately revoked that when they got back there with the permit. She saw that on there, that she didn't revoke it probably the way that I would through writing, but I think she called, and I'm not sure how it was revoked. But she revoked that additional consideration or that condition that was put on there. I just want you to know that.
so she refuted it, but she didn't revoke her building permit.
Well, I'm not sure exactly what she said.
Okay,
Building, according to this, that's for phase 3, which hasn't started. So it sounds to me like she said, this, I'm not going to adhere to this by removing the sign,
right, right.
And so someone up here at the city was put on notice, at least by her phone call, and I don't think she did it in writing, but somebody should have been notified
Yep.
that she had verbally revoked that.
Yep, and that
portion
that
of it.
resulted in the addition of this in planning and zoning last week. So the whole fact that there was that addition to the building permit,
Okay.
that was reviewed by planning and zoning. So her call was the catalyst to get it reviewed by P and Z again. That was the
Okay.
second time P and Z
Okay.
looked at that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you know, like has been said before, the city could do a much better job of what it did here. Let her keep her sign. It's working. It may not be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but it's working. She can turn it on whenever she wants to, and there's no law that says she has to have it running, you know, every day. She could run it once a week, once a month. That would suffice under the law. Okay, so let her keep her sign. She's doing a lot for Hill City here. She keeps the cafe open, even though she's not making a ton of money in the wintertime. She keeps it open to help the city, to help draw people in here. So, you know, I ask you to give her a break, you know.
Yep.
Let her keep her sign, and let's get on with business. So let's build phase 3 even, you know. So
Exactly.
my last point is that I really don't like the idea of having to get another building permit. I had a building permit. She had a building permit. That building permit was good.
But it may be expired.
Okay.
That
Well,
was my,
I don't know.
I
that
think
was my
that's what
point.
happened. It was ready to expire. They sent me a letter.
Yes.
And I came in right away and to do it, because Daddy told me to come in and
Right.
do it, and I did it.
So instead of extending it a third time,
Okay.
I believe what happened is a brand-new building permit got taken out. So that's why I needed the
I think
timeline.
it was ready
Right.
to expire.
Yeah.
You
And that's why I'm
That's what the whole
thinking that whole
situation
thing
was.
came up, exactly. So that's why I'm saying, let's,
Yeah.
you know, let's give her that building permit, let them decide on that being attached, and then they can speak to the sign itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said that the building permit had been administratively extended 2 times?
It's my belief, or my understanding, it had been extended twice
If
administratively.
it's administratively extended, is it for an automatic period of time, or is it a time that's just set by the zoning commission?
Were they 6-month deals?
Yeah,
So 6 months?
we usually extend it with a dialogue, again,
Uh-huh.
with a dialogue between the property owner or the agent, you know, the contractor with the city, saying, hey, what's going on? I've had problems with getting materials, or I've had employee issues not showing up, I'm shorthanded. You know, there's usually a dialogue of saying, hey, this is what the challenges that I have. And then we'll say, okay, look, let's administratively extend it for 6 months. And then, is that a reasonable amount of time for you to get the work done? A lot of times the answer is yes. And then we just administratively do that. Then what we do is we convey that information to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay.
They're not involved in a vote or anything. It's something that we can do in the office. I know I have, now I'm not going to speak for Danny, I'm going to speak more for myself because I used to do Danny's job. I've done a 6-month extension, and then that one wasn't enough, not for this property, I'm talking in general, with other property owners, and then I've extended for another 6 months, okay? My comfort level, though, after those 2 is I need to go to the commission if we're going to extend it any further, because I need to bring in the group to have that discussion of saying, okay, wait a minute, it's a year later now, we're still in the same boat, we haven't accomplished what you said you would accomplish. There has to be a comfort level here, and then we rise it up to that challenge of saying, okay, we need to take it forward because we're not getting to the end of the completion of the project. So it's all about trying to work with people.
Right.
You know?
Am I to understand that the decision you're trying to make tonight is whether to remove that portion of the building permit that says you have to have the sign removed?
Correct. So that's what I want them to rule on first.
And then to validate that
And
building
then to
permit?
validate this, right, so that'll leave her the building permit without that requirement.
Okay, and would that building permit extend from this date, or the approval date, or from back?
Whatever the
that
date it was issued, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
it will follow the normal progression from the date it was issued.
Right.
Okay.
But then the other question is, you know, is this a conforming sign or non-conforming sign that the council should rule on? Because we don't want to have, you people have to come back here again to hit that as a separate topic, right? As I see it as 2
Right.
separate topics, the building permit,
Right.
take it off or leave it on, and then talk about the sign.
Okay.
Okay? Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Okay.
So P and Z, so if this was replacing the first building permit,
Correct.
if that's indeed what was happening, but we don't know that yet.
Right, we don't know that yet, and
Yeah.
we're gonna get a timeline on that.
So we got conflicting stuff there.
Right.
And at that point, P&Z is being told that this is a non-conforming sign. So they add this condition to the building permit.
They've,
Because they're being told it's a non-conforming sign.
So-
So they, I think rightfully probably add it to the.
they were
Building
provided with
permit
the
sign.
same information that you folks have,
But-
right? If, regardless of what city employee sits there, they make a recommendation, it doesn't mean that
They were
it's
told
necessary
that.
what you see.
Yeah, I know they have the right to make their own decision.
Right.
But they were told that, hey, this is, why would they question that? They're, they're sitting there being told by staff that this is a non-conforming sign.
Well, I would expect them to look and do the same research you guys did and have the questions you had right
Well, I
here.
don't know if that,
So-
maybe that happens, I don't
That's
know.
the
but,
accountability. So,
um,
so if we look at it that way, can we at least get a decision or some type of motion relative to the building permit? And then we'll bring more information, I'll look at the timeline and all of that, but just to make sure that she still has the ability to continue to work, which she has been under this, can we just get a decision on that? And then we can engage in conversation on is it a conforming or non-conforming?
Well, wouldn't it be prudent to know if the first building permit was still in play? Because we don't know that answer yet.
So then you can continue this until we get more information.
I mean,
That's your
your
choice.
contention is that it replaced that. No, Patty, do you know that for sure?
I think it was about ready to end.
Uh-huh.
And that's when Danny told me that I needed to come up and renew it. And I think that, I talked to Daryl, and he said, I'll take care of it. And then all this other crap came off into it.
So from her, Patty, then, that this probably did replace the first one.
That's what I'm hearing.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that kind of takes care of that question, if you feel that that's true.
And again, I'm still gonna do
Daryl
the
said
timeline.
he'd take care of it.
Huh?
And then there was a big argument because of the sign.
Yeah,
So
so,
then the question is whether the sign has been conforming.
right. So I would address the building permit to let her have what she needs and then talk about the sign.
So we're addressing the second building permit.
Right, the one that has the addendum to
And what
it.
we're addressing in that, whether that should have the sign.
Should be on there or not, should that clause be on there or not? And if the council decides that the clause should not be on there, then you can vote and you can come up to that and that takes care of that. Then you still need to look at the sign.
So then we got testimony from them saying that the sign was on, sometimes off, sometimes whatever.
Right.
Okay, and we really, we have what was supposed to be a notice, and may be a notice. So,
So that's different. So now we're talking about that sign, was it appropriate notice as a non-conforming sign, all of those kind of things. I'm just trying to make sure that Patty gets her building permit so she can continue with that and then
well,
we can continue.
she has
on.
her building permit now, right?
Right, but she's
But it's-
held up by the addendum that
This
you have on
particular
it.
contingency.
Correct.
Yeah, I get that.
Does the city feel like the first building permit was ended, done away with for the second one?
I don't have that information tonight, Steve. I'm happy to put
Is it
together a,
possible for me to speak?
Not yet, hon. We're still, the council is still talking.
I'm happy to put together a timeline that talks about when it was first issued, any extensions, any other conversations with planning and zoning that occurred, what action was taken as to the timeline of that permit.
See, because
But I don't have all of that
I'm hearing the
information
business
tonight.
owner feels like it was, but the city is not sure.
Well, we don't have the facts in front of us. That wasn't brought for this meeting, right? So we don't have the timeline and the chronological history of it. But based on what you've heard, to make an assumption, the first one was there, it was administratively extended. The second one was administratively extended. It was coming toward the end. Patty was brought up here, and then all these other things were brought into play. So I have a comfort level that that's what happened. It wasn't just out of the blue, they said you need a new permit, right? It was actually coming to an end. Now, if you guys want to rule and say, all right, that permit's valid, just validate the dates, so you can make a motion that actually includes, yep, I want to remove this, or I don't want to remove it, with the contingency that the timeline will be developed to show the progression of the permit. That can be done.
So is the construction being held up now?
I mean, she has her building
She's
permit.
got her building permit, so I would hope that she doesn't stop her construction when she's able to do it.
So a minute ago, you said we don't have all the facts, which I don't think we do. Okay?
Right, the facts of the
And
timeline.
the
of
fact
this.
that we'll find out if this second building permit is indeed in fact, which it sounds like it probably is. And the fact that P&Z decided to add this contingency to it based on information they were given, which is contrary to what the business owner is saying. And so I guess, allow the building permit to continue and continue this section, or this particular item, until we get all the facts.
Okay.
I mean, do we have all the facts? I mean, are you?
No, I'm not comfortable.
But I'm not gonna sit here and say, don't allow the building permit, let her keep going.
That's right.
Right.
And then we can find out
building.
how this building permit went. She's already stated that the sign is on, off, whatever. None of us are gonna be able to prove that one way or another.
Right.
I'm a pro property rights guy, and it's really, I think, pretty important to get this right, because we could be trashing, I'm not at all interested in trashing on people's rights.
Yep.
And, we have laws, so this goes really toward the core of that. And I'm okay with the building permit going on and get the rest of the information and get the timeline, so we actually have it. And then if we need the attorney to look at this as to see if this is noticing, and if the attorneys are online still, I would like them to, I'm not saying we have to as a group decide that, which we decided a long time ago, which didn't always happen, but is this a sufficient notice? Was it acceptable notice? And then what their reasoning and their factual findings behind that.
Okay, so we can give our legal appropriate direction. Does the council want
Well, if we
to
need,
invest in it
maybe
to make that determination?
determination. I don't know,
This
Bill feels,
letter, I would like to see them look at it.
Okay,
this letter, Bill felt like it was sketchy.
okay, so,
I'm just so incredibly frustrated that we make stuff up.
okay,
There's not a process. We have no procedure. The city should know the rules. The city should advise the property owner of the rules. You brought before us a packet with incomplete information. It says one thing in here, that she was told to have it operational within 2 weeks. But that's not what the notice says in the rules. And then you said there were other conversations that you've had with her, but none of that is documented. Anytime in my professional career I had conversations with somebody, I made a note to the file. You say, on this date, this time, I spoke to whoever, and that's all made part of the record so that we have that. We have none of this.
okay, so,
And so, until the city can prove anything to
Yep.
me,
yep.
this is not acceptable.
So I'm gonna tell you right now, I do not know what type of notes were kept in the file on this. So what will happen is we'll talk to Danny, and I have seen other files that she has had notes in. So we're not gonna say that there isn't documentation of conversations, but you haven't been provided with it. It didn't come as part of this, so I understand that. So that's additional information that you need, Bill. I'm not disagreeing
Right.
with you, okay?
So
What
it's
I'm-
here as an action item, the people are here waiting, and we haven't been given complete information. So now we're saying, let's go seek a legal opinion, let's do this, and then maybe Patty can come back in a couple weeks, and then we'll
I
talk
don't have
about
time
it
for
again.
it.
Okay,
So,
and that's not.
I'm incredibly frustrated with this.
Okay, so, now, we have other people that also wanted to speak as well.
Sure.
So can we let the other folks that wanted to speak on this as well, and then we'll need a motion, some direction from you relative to what you want to do. So Connie, I know that you wanted to say something. Connie?
I of all, yes, when I was in the commission, we were understood that the...
Speak up a little louder if you could, Connie.
Okay, I'm sorry. It was determined that the permit expired. That's why we went the next route instead of trying to re-extend it. There were so many changes that we wanted to make it right.
There was no changes.
So it was not extended, had expired past the timeline or whatever. And I could be wrong, but that was what the understanding was.
Okay.
As far as correspondence to the owner, Danny had a timeline that she wrote up. I understand that all the commissioners get the packet for P&Z. It should have been in that. So, okay, I would like to just read what I sent. I was hoping somebody would read it tonight so I didn't have to do it so you could hear it better. I do understand that Hill City is great.
Connie, I'll go ahead and read it, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep, I'll read it. Go ahead.
And the other thing is the reason that it was put in as a contingent item was because she was told that it needed to be removed and it was not removed. And it was put in as a contingent to see that was done because she was past the due date that it was over 12 months not working.
Okay.
And there's also other things about, I understand proof that we didn't stand 24/7 and look at the sign to see if it was working. I do understand that. So go ahead.
Okay, so this was a letter that Connie had sent in. And she said, regarding the Hill City Cafe electronic sign, I do understand that Hill City Cafe is a great and reliable service and asset to our community and our visiting public. The cafe supports our schools, our events, and many other related activities of the Hill City community, and I am forever thankful. Having that said, I still stand strong with the P&Z Commission's decision on the issue which requires the electronic sign to be removed. If we waver on this violation and give leniency on this grandfather issue, the P&Z and Council are setting a very harmful precedent that will surely come back to haunt us. The cafe has been given allowances by the City of Hill City over the last couple of years. Phase 1 and Phase 2 building permits went over the 2-year extension allowance, and due to the cafe's change of contractor and multiple occurrences, the city was humble and allowed a second extension on the permit so the cafe could complete its project without delays, fees, etc. In September of 2019, it was apparent to the city that the cafe had failed to remove the canopy per its plans. The sidewalk project was in full gear and the administration took on the time, expense, and effort to deal with the situation. For the September 9th, 2019 minutes, Complete Contracting Solutions gave quotes for 2 options, one being to remove the canopy for $13,840 and leave the canopy for $19,685. This was a big deal and certainly was a huge expense for the city in multiple ways. The council honored the cafe's request to leave the canopy and authorized the change order for $19,685. Then add on multiple efforts, time and expense of the city corresponding physically and in written form for over a year, maybe a year and a half or more, for the cafe to come into compliance to remove the electronic sign, and no compliance was met. The cafe was also in violation of non-compliance by not removing the electronic sign per South Dakota law. It is time for the Hill City Cafe, the P&Z commissioners, and city council aldermen to respect our laws and the laws of South Dakota. I urge the P&C ruling on this topic to be upheld by the city council tonight. So that was that. I know that there are some other folks in the audience who had their hand up first. Figure out who wants to go first and come up and introduce yourself.
Hi, Susan Sherbeck. I'm just wondering if the attorneys that are listening might have something to weigh in on this. I would be very interested in hearing your thoughts. Thank you.
Before I go there, I'll go ahead and take the next audience participant.
Yes, my name is Cheryl Whittam, and I'm not here to talk about whether the city had all their ducks in a row or anything of whether the building permits were there. I'm here just as looking at the big picture. And the reason I wanted to say something is I just returned from Colorado. So I was up in Dillon, Frisco, Breckenridge. And when I was looking around, it took me a while to like connect the dots, and all of a sudden it's like, you know, why does this town look this way? And the reason it looked that way is they're following exactly our comprehensive long-term plan. They have, they're following signage, they're following building styles, and the town looked great. So all this is a friendly reminder. We do have a comprehensive plan that we're all on the same team and trying to go for. So that's all I have to say, except I am in awe of what you do for the community and how you do support the firemen, prom night, stuff like that.
Thank you, and thank you for your patience as we had time to get back to you. Talbot, are you still on the phone?
I am.
So, is there anything you'd like to add at this point? I know you'd probably like to get the information and take a better look at it.
Yeah, a couple things though. When the city ordinance cites the state law, the city ordinance, if it's more restrictive, actually applies. So to the extent there's confusion as to what state law says and the city ordinance says, to the extent that the city ordinance in city boundaries is more restrictive, generally the city ordinance is always going to apply.
Okay, thank you.
And then as to the notice provisions, I'll need to take a look back at the city ordinance to see what's required in those notice letters. They look very similar to most notice letters I see. I would agree with what I think one of the councilmen made a comment that you can always write a better letter. And I have found after 29 years of practicing law, I could always have written a better contract 6 months after I look at it again. It's always that 20/20 vision is always better. But on their face, they appear to meet with the standard notice type information. But I would like to take a look at the city ordinance to make sure two things: that they do provide enough information under the ordinance, and number two, there's always a better way to write it, and maybe a new set of eyes. And having listened to this conversation, maybe there's a couple of different things we can add to it that would avoid a conversation. Lengthy conversation over a sign in the future.
Okay, thank you very much.
With that, if you have if any of the council members have a specific question, I'll try to answer as best I can, but that's generally my take on it, having looked at what I've looked at and listened to the comments.
Yeah, Talbot, is it Talbot?
Talbot.
Talbot, sorry. Talbot, Jim Peterson. Hey, on state law, can a city, and I think I know the answer to this, but the city obviously can have a more restrictive covenant, if you will. Can they have a less restrictive covenant than state law?
That can exist in certain circumstances, not all. You can't be less restrictive than for some state laws. However, generally in signage, you could be arguably less restrictive than what the state requires. Most of the state law signage laws have to do with state highways, and they're fairly restrictive on what you can do on those. But the DOT tends to take a...
Oh, did we miss you?
Hello?
We lost him.
Yeah, we lost
I
it.
didn't do it.
It cuts out. I had that
You were 10
problem.
feet away.
Well, I was pushing this.
Don't push it because that mutes it.
But
I know.
Yeah,
It's
Luke's
correct.
over
Okay,
here too.
Who did that?
I can read that. I see it.
Okay.
Mutes ours too.
Oh,
It mutes them all.
oh.
Yeah, maybe you better dial back in. So, while Stacia's dialing back in, we can hear it sounded like Talbot was hopefully concluding the answer to your question. Do we have anything else? Victor, can you be concise?
Yeah,
Come on up to the front.
Vic Alexander, I'm just saying, if you're gonna deal with the sign permit first, and then look at the appendage to the sign permit.
This service
if it
is
was in
provided by
fact in
freeconferencecall.com. Please enter
over the
your
past
access
few
PIN
months,
followed by the pound or hash
it
sign.
looks to me like you can get it done right away, can't you?
If you are the host,
It
press
seems like if you're gonna deal with
enter your PIN
the
followed
actual
by
building permit first, and you go to the point of the building permit, now there's the
There
question
is
of the
one host
appendage to the
and
building
one
permit.
participant in this
If
conference.
it looks like the sign has been in order, which is what would have taken it out of grandfathering, it still is. And if it's, so, since it's not, in other words, it's been kind of shown that it's been in order. If it is in order, you can deal with the sign first, or I mean, the building permit first, and then turn around and deal with the sign again, or maybe even the same motion, I don't know. I just kick it out there, because it looks like it's gonna go on forever.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was
Yeah.
trying to
And
make it clear what
ready to
the
vote.
permit was, and so do I, if no other conversation, do I have a motion?
To close conversation or to deal with?
I got cut off. Can I say something?
Sure, Connie?
You called. I am still concerned, at the timeline. The property owner, as much as I love her, was given a lot of opportunity to take care of this ahead of time or coming ahead of time. I am just very concerned that if we change this, we're going to be on this another year.
Okay.
So with that concept, the council will have to make their best determination.
Okay, thank you, Connie. All right, I believe, Mr. Minor, you were ready?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that building permit number B2019-25, remodeling Phase 3 Hill City Cafe. Condition 1, the non-conforming abandoned electronic sign is removed from the awning before work on Phase 3 commences. So to me, that says she can't start on her project till that sign comes down. So I will make the motion to remove condition 1.
Okay,
Second.
and it's seconded, so motion by Alder,
It's still with Eric and rejoining. For some reason, we were getting cut off on the hour.
okay, that's okay. Talbot, if you can just hang on for a second, I've got a motion on the floor in a second. Let's just finish let's finish the vote, and then I'll go ahead and I'll recognize you before they talk anymore. And just to make sure that you're aware, there's a motion on the floor to remove condition number 1 for the removal of the electronic sign from the building permit. Issued by Alderman Minor, seconded by Alderman Johnson. Roll call vote, please.
Jim Peterson,
Yes.
Bill Minor,
Yes.
John Johnson,
Yes.
Steve Jarvis.
Yes.
Okay, so all in favor, motion carries. The condition to remove the electronic sign associated with the building permit passes. Okay, now Talbot, I'm sorry, please keep it down. Talbot, can you please go ahead and finish your statement? Sorry about that.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know exactly when I got cut off. The last question that I had heard was the one on can you be less restrictive than the state? And that can occur. What I was saying was the DOT puts restrictions on the signage along state highways. That's where you see most state regulation. And there are certain cities that have less restrictive signage than the DOT requirements.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
My final statement, before things like this come to council, I would ask that the complete record be here. And if there's conversations, that those be included and all the information. I think it's unfair to council to be asked to vote on something when we haven't been provided all the information.
Okay.
And all city personnel involved
So
be present, such as Ms. Shade.
that's why this took so long, because we haven't been provided all the information.
Okay.
So
In regard to this sign down there anyhow, it means it's city right away up, right up to the front of Patty's building, which is precedence, city code or state code, or state statutes.
So it is state right-of-way, right up to the building fronts. But we have an agreement with the state that we manage and regulate the signage as it goes on in the awnings and whatnot. The state doesn't Well, the state cares as long as we're the ones that are doing the regulation of the signage.
Okay, then I think the second thing that we had with regard to this is relative to it being appropriate notice or not appropriate notice. There has been, from what I can see, a consensus among the council to allow Talbot to do some additional research to look into the notice, what the requirements are and what is that. So with that being said, is there a motion to table that until additional research has been completed?
Well, Mayor, so the core question has been addressed.
Yeah.
And so I would take that other conversation as just some good staff direction for us to work with Talbot.
Okay.
To make sure that when we send out letters that they're appropriately addressing whatever the issue is.
Okay.
Because the issue is a moving target. Today it's a sign. Tomorrow it might be a building that's falling over. The next day we might be dealing with snow. The next day it's animals, pets, whatnot. And
Yes.
so there may be unique letters that need to go out that don't look anything like this letter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm taking that as just some direction from the council to have us look at those letters and have them more appropriate to whatever we're trying to address with the public.
Okay, but don't we still have an issue relative to that sign that needs to be addressed by the council?
Not in my mind. And they've removed that contingency of that sign to be removed.
There's nothing.
So that's, okay.
It's a legal, non-conforming sign, period.
Okay.
Still,
Does the sign have to go or can it stay?
Still is. Yep.
So,
So it's
Okay.
working now, isn't it?
It is working.
I seen it done the other day.
I've seen it on.
Have to plug it in.
there's nothing further the council needs to do.
So
Okay.
the only thing I would add is that, obviously this is a contentious deal, but whatever keeps it a legal, non-conforming sign, make sure that is given to Patty
So she
in a
understands.
written format so that she knows if she doesn't do this, this will happen.
Yes.
As anybody,
Yep.
so.
Yes.
So that is, there's no question that has been delivered.
Okay. Okay.
So that would be a question for P and Z. Does it have to run 1 month out of the year? You know, how many hours a day? Do you just turn it on for a minute and then that's good? That's,
Well, they're working on a sign deal, I guess. I don't,
So they should work on that while they're working on the sign.
exactly.
So.
Okay.
It sets what conditions.
All right. Okay, anything else? All right, that matter closed. Let's go on to report items. Janet?
Thank you very much.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah, thanks, Janet.
And I have a score update for all you Clemson and LSU fans. 17-14 Clemson.
Okay.
that final?
No, that's not final. So, did you?
I just picked it up.
Oh,
and it
thank
fell
you.
out of your
Thank you
stuff.
kindly. All right, so I will be brief since you've all been intensely listening and thinking. We're working very hard at the chamber to maximize, always ever improve our efficiency and our productivity and reduce expenses. So we had multiple challenges for like once or twice a week for about 5 weeks going. The upshot is that we've replaced our computer, our software, switched service providers for our phone and internet, which is in the long run going to save us money, so I'm really excited about that. Our Southern Hills vacation guide is almost ready to be, it's printed and it's almost ready to be distributed, so that's one thing that's coming down the pike. We're ahead of our requests for information already. I took one over the weekend and I had one today. People are starting to plan vacations, so the web requests are up and we want to see those increase. We're going to do that through targeted emails, putting our links out for the Southern Hills Vacation Guide, making those available on Facebook and on our website as well, so that's pretty exciting. Also going forward is a community endeavor for Meals on Wheels. We're going to have a meeting tomorrow afternoon to expand that program here in Hill City. I'm anxious to meet with Mayor Kathy on a number of things I can't wait to meet with you about. First quarter advertising, we are doing print, several radio stations actually, and we already have one interview with KOTA live broadcast with their new anchor Blake Joseph coming up in March. So that's very exciting. You can pretty much see the numbers there, both on the report and then on the VIC sheet for you. You can see that our web requests were up. We definitely want to increase those. They were up from 2018. The numbers were down overall, and I don't think that's any surprise to anybody with flooding issues and traffic coming into Hill City. We've expanded our reach in terms of promotion about Hill City, getting our events on our website, visit hillcitysd.com, and expanding our reach out to our community calendars in the area. So that's a big deal. And we're just going to continue to do more of the same. Any questions or
for Janet?
Comments?
So, on page 2, under update, towards the middle or lower part of the page, says ceiling fan 2020, quote obtained, prior to 2020 peak season, Vic building painted, and then it says stone pathway or sidewalk from west parking lot to front door.
Wish list.
Are those projects you're working on, or are those projects you wish the city to work on? What are you telling me there?
Those are things that we just put on as a wish list. Staff had requested a fan, a ceiling fan, if possible. Brett and I have also had conversations with regard to the painting. That would be awesome if we could get that done. Those are things that we've talked about. How could we get them done? Whether it's a volunteer crew, city buys the paint, that kind of thing. Victor and I just had a conversation about a stone pathway. We see increased traffic from our west parking lot. Right. There are a number of ways that could be done. We raise money and get sponsorships for that. Bring in one of our chamber members to get to assist with that. Volunteer crew, these would all have to come before the city for approval since we're the tenant. But
well, that was my question.
Yes.
Are those in the 2020 budget or not?
The ceiling fan would be, anything outside of that would be additional.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janet.
And I hope you all saw the new billboard out south of town. It looks awesome.
Yes, it does.
Goal again of directing people to Hill City. So
Thank you
all.
Thank you. Okay, as far as the Public Work Director's report, as everyone knows, we are still in search of the candidate. However, the staff is pulling together for the department report that you see in front of you. So there is really nothing significant to talk about with regard to this. Our infiltration has come down quite a bit, but we still are experiencing it, and I know that Jim at the water treatment plant is still working on that to come up with things to test and things that we can do. So pretty much business as usual for that. And now we're going to go into report out items. So let's go ahead and start with Johnny. Johnny, anything to report from the council?
Nope, nothing there.
Steve?
Nothing.
Bill? Jim?
Yeah, I'd like an action towards my proposal on appointment timelines, since I presented a timeline to you guys. I didn't bring it tonight, but you had it before, about how to make appointments, how the council gets up ahead of it instead of coming to the July meeting and being told what the appointments are. I'd like to see that get implemented.
Okay.
Also, we're dealing with the TIF, which we had Toby Morris, who's a bond guy. I also proposed that we should refinance the road paving bond that we have right now and borrow another $1 million, whatever, go back up to the original amount and continue and pay off that particular bond and take the balance and pave some more roads.
Okay. Anything else?
After I've presented those, I'd like to get some kind of up or down on those.
Okay.
Nothing that, what else I have is we'll go in executive session.
Okay. All right. And from my perspective. So Victor had kindly brought it up earlier, but we are short crew in Public Works. We were down a Public Works director, and just before Christmas, we had the resignation, or just before New Year's, we had the resignation of Luke, who is on our Public Works staff. So he is no longer with us. We are currently in the process of actively looking for people and interviewing, so hopefully we'll be able to fill those spots sooner rather than later. As a result, the Public Works staff is down, so that means that they're prioritizing the work that they do. So you may see it take longer for the sidewalks to be done and things like that, but I appreciate the patience that the city has as we go through this time to fill out our positions. I did attend the P&Z meeting last week. There was some discussion on the sign ordinance. There was actually a lot of conversation and back and forth, and some specific questions were addressed. So they're still continuing to work that. There was some discussion on a transient vendor work that they want to do to try to take a look at that. So that's being put together by the Planning and Zoning Commission as well. And then the last thing that I had was the EDC. So there's a meeting on Thursday, but they had their board retreat last week. And I attended their board retreat. It was another very good session where they started to take a look at what their goals and what they're going to be targeting for next year. So it was a well-attended session for the EDC. So I'm looking to see more stuff out of them. They will also be coming on a regular basis, on a quarterly basis, to interact with the council and provide details of what's happening. So that schedule has been set up for them as well. Other than that, that's all I had, so let me go ahead and turn it over to Brett.
Okay, real quick, Main Street Sidewalk Project, you probably all have noticed, there is no activity as far as construction on the sidewalk right now. Typically, what Complete Concrete does is they lay off a lot of their staff during the winter time, just because the weather's so varied throughout the months of January, February, and part of March. And so they'll get their crew back probably in March, and they'll come back and pick up where they left off. You know, they have that almost that entire bottom sidewalk done except for a little patch, temporary patch they did. It's about 6 feet wide, 8 feet wide. They'll come up, pick up where they left off there, and remove that upper sidewalk in front of the Harley Davidson shop down to the Ben West Gallery. And so just pick up where they left off. I'm hoping that the permanent railing, I was told that the permanent railing would start installation sometime in January. So it should have been probably, there was some talk about it happening last week. Probably more realistic this week, but depending on weather and whatnot, I don't have a firm date on that. But I'm going to make another phone call to see if there's any new information. I didn't get a chance to do that today. But that, once that gets in place, that whole rest of the block, you know, from essentially the handbag store, the north edge of the handbag store to the north, once that railing goes in, that part is done.
Where it ends now at Warriors Work or whatever, that concrete, is that the end of the concrete then going south on that block?
Yeah.
The rest of that will stay the same?
The end of the project is the property boundary between the gallery and the Dairy Queen there.
Yeah.
So it just goes up to that point. The rest of the concrete staying just as it is until the very end of the corner. That corner will be redone with an ADA access compliant walkway. So the corner will get worked on.
Okay, gotcha. And then
once they're done with
the street,
once they're done with the upper part and get all that work, then they'll transition down to Desperados and do the same essential work that was done on the previous block. So
Is this going to put us behind them laying off this long?
You know, I think they kind of had this built into their game plan. I think it was probably in late October, they added another 3-man crew to kind of dig ahead of them and made a lot of good progress to try to get ahead of it to a point where they could safely kind of button it up for the cold weather. They still have to get it done by May 1st, and so they need to put the appropriate crew on it to make sure that they're meeting the deadlines. I think they can do it. If you watch them like I have over the past several months, you know, it's kind of the wall and the design and what we've been doing to it. They learn as they go and they get more efficient at it. The most time-consuming process of it is really not the digging or the pouring, it's really the framing out the footing, framing out the wall, putting the panels up, and then the decorative template that's on there, and then getting it poured with a different type of concrete, letting it set and cure, and then disassembling it all. The other time killer has been when it gets cold at night, they need to maintain a certain constant temperature for that concrete after they pour. So they're constantly using ground heaters, blankets, whatever they can to try to maintain that. And that took a fair amount of their time. And so working through January or February, they'd spend more time trying to curb the temperatures than anything, you know. So they'll be back in March and we get ramped up, and we'll slowly wake up and get that done. So I think we have a pretty good crew with them. And then I'm just, you know, every once in a while I get a phone call from a business owner, or I'll walk Main Street, make sure that everything is still buttoned up for the next couple months, that there's not a trip hazard, something's coming loose, whatnot. So we're watching that as well. DOT is stopping as well. And on occasion, I think Complete has said they were going to come up. I don't know what that schedule is like. The next project, the business improvement project, I had hoped to have the bid letting on tonight's agenda. I'm still waiting for the electrical engineer, so he didn't meet the timeline that we had spelled out. I am told that by Friday I will get the electrical engineer stuff. Then Kayla and I can put the final touches on it, just review it. And so I said it's going to be on the next council agenda. So expect it on your next packet, okay, for the alleyway improvements, the asphalt, the curb and gutter, the parking lot creation, the moving of the lights, the pedestals over associated to the bid project. I met with, so transitioning to the other facet of the bid project, the construction of the addition to the senior center and the other improvements associated with that. I met with our engineer, Kale, myself, Buzz Grover, and the architect, Donovan Broberg. We met last week. They are going to have all the mechanical, the due date is the end of this month, so the 31st, 31st. And so we'll get all the mechanical from them. We still need to review it. And so I expect that will be maybe not on the first agenda of the council, but the second one to put that one out to bid, because we need to move forward. I also need to communicate that final plan to the bid board before it comes to you guys. I am planning on tentatively the next bid board date, and I know Cheryl left, but she's always interested. The tentative date for the next bid board is February 6th, which is, I believe, the first Thursday of February, so that we have more information of how the plan is evolved. It's productive time. Okay. Again, the construction of these projects, the asphalt, we can't really start construction on that until probably April sometime, but I need to get the bids out and award the bids, get the contract signed and whatnot. So there's some work associated to that. The construction of the senior center stuff probably will need to occur probably in the fall, because there's quite a bit going on in the senior center during the summer. But once we get closer to that final information, we'll coordinate with the senior center to make sure that we're doing it time effectively wise. The water reservoir project, I'm still communicating with Field Development. They're asking me questions of project plans and tweaks and timelines. And so we've communicated those, and so we're just going back and forth with those questions and getting those answered. I'm hoping to have a more definitive milestone plan here in the next 2 weeks of target dates and whatnot of how to progress, because they're really still in the stage of asking any questions of how the project may have changed since a few months ago. So we're working through those questions. The Major Lake Bridge project, I met with members of the Forest Service last Wednesday. I met with somebody else Tuesday. That was the architect. Wednesday. And we, in order to put the sewer line and reroute it the way we want to, we just need to amend our special use permit with the Forest Service. That's over a major lake. And so I've already got all the paperwork. I'm processing that and getting that through. They're still waiting for a determination from their staff member that reviews the environmental and archaeological impact of that sewer line going through Forest Service property. And I believe that that work has already been done. They just need to review it. Well, I know the study has been done. They just need to review it, accept it, make sure they don't have any lingering questions on it. Okay. So that is moving along. On that water reservoir project, I don't, or on the bridge project, sorry, I don't have a milestone date yet on that. But all of the work that they need from me, I'm going to get done by the end of this month, which means the letters to amend our existing special use permit and the exhibit that goes along with it, just saying what we're amending. Okay? And I've already got all of those drawings done, so they already exist. The TIF, Danny and I met with Jim Skull today. Over the past 2 weeks, we've been reviewing the plat and road information. We've gotten feedback from the city engineer on a couple of things. We're addressing things with the PUD because there's going to be some special visioning for this project because we're dealing with not only single-family homes, but also the tiny home element to it. And so we're fleshing those out, addressing setbacks, and we're also getting into some of the building code requirements of tiny homes, because there's some things in the building code that need to be addressed. So that is progressing. That one is going to evolve for a little bit of time. And Jim is on board. Everything we went through today, he didn't have any concerns about. So we're on the right path. We're also talking about road improvements for Top of Hill, the driving surface width, any potential opportunity for on-street parking if we want it there, traffic speeds, how the road will be utilized going forward. That Top of Hill actually has that kind of that hump in it of getting that down to an appropriate grade. So, more technical stuff such as that is what we're kind of getting into with him. Other than that, operationally, we just been working a lot with Public Works just because they've got a short staffing situation that the mayor had talked about. So Stacia and I are kind of helping out with coordination with them and helping them be the best that they can be. So anyway, that's all I have.
Okay, anything else? Council?
Nothing.
Do you want to recognize someone in the audience?
You in here?
Victor, come up to the front, please.
Vic Alexander, and I tried to get in before the vote when it happened, but is there, and the legal guys on the phone probably now can tell us, is all the city records and papers and history and archives and all that stuff be able to be transferred over from the old attorneys to us before we pay their last bill?
Yes.
I just because that's a good time, anytime you gotta withhold, you got withhold.
Nope, Victor, so to answer your question, the two law firms have worked together and they've done some knowledge transfer. They have hopefully received already, and Talbot can confirm that, all of the information that they have, and then there's also some archived information of cases that were closed long ago that we'll retain here in City Hall.
Just while you owe them money, it's a good time to get a handle on it. So.
It's already been done. Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session after a 5-minute break.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, folks. Thanks, everybody on the phone.
Vic.